There's a lot of people who get better dramatically and they heal at a deep level, but the doctors and medicines are not what's getting them better. And you see the same patterns coming up in interview after interview with a lot of overlap. That was fascinating to me.
안녕하세요. 전 세계 화제의 책과 저자를 깊이 있게 들여다보는 시간 스텔라의 북인사이트 스텔라입니다. 이 과학에서 중요한 건 새로운 지식을 발견하는 게 아니라 그걸 바라보는 새로운 관점을 찾는 일이다라는 말이 있죠. 오늘 초대한 분과 우리 몸과 건강에 대해서 그런 얘기를 나눠볼 수 있을 것 같은데요. 최근 들어 더욱 이 건강과 노화 방지, 웰니스에 관심이 많잖아요. 오늘은 하버드 의과대학에서 20년 넘게 치료가 어려운 상태에서 기적적으로 회복한 사례들을 그냥 기적으로 넘기지 않고 집요하게 연구해온 제프리 레디거 박사님과 함께 내 안의 치유 본능을 깨우는 법, 안 아프고 활력 있게 사는 법에 대해서 이야기 나눠보겠습니다. Welcome to Stella's Book Insight. I'm your host, Stella. Joining us today is Dr. Jeffrey Rediger, a world-renowned medical expert and the mastermind behind this book, Cured, published in Korea as 하버드 치유혁명. He's with us today to redefine everything we thought we knew about health and healing. Jeff, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Could you please start by greeting our Korean audience and giving us a brief introduction of yourself?
I was raised on a farm in rural Indiana. It's in a very impoverished and conservative family. It was violent, and I ran off to college and then seminary at Princeton and med school, and I've been on the faculty of Harvard Medical School now for 24 years, was medical director for 22 years of a branch of McLean Hospital, which is Harvard's leading psychiatric hospital. So I've been very interested in studying the Olympians of health and well-being, basically, and it's been an honor for me to do so, and it's changed me deeply, both personally and professionally, to get to study these people.
What really hooked me about your research comes down to like how we look at the data. Like as a quantitative management scholar, I'm hardwired to focus on like broader trends and throw out extreme outliers. And as a medical expert, you know, mainstream science does the exact same thing with unexpected recoveries. But instead of like ignoring them, you ran straight toward those like ultimate medical outliers and decided to crack the code on spontaneous remission. And that is exactly where I want to start this conversation. So to lay the groundwork for our audience in the simplest terms possible, how would you explain what spontaneous remission means?
Well, there's a lot of mysteries out there about people who get better, and the people that I study are the ones who are screened out of the studies because they're not fitting in the normal curve very well. And so these are the outliers. And it turns out the outliers are doing things really differently. I mean, you know, if we look at other disciplines, I mean, we study ultimate achievers in sports and in business, but why don't we study them in medicine? And, you know, the truth is, if I was really sick, I'd want to know what the average person does, which is what the studies tell us, and that's all important. But I'd also want to know, what are the real Olympians of health and well-being? What are the ones doing who really outperform or for some reason have better outcomes? And so I think we need a kind of science that also can look at the outliers. And that means we have to think about science differently.
What surprised you the most when you first started looking into these cases?
There's a lot of people who get better dramatically and they heal at a deep level, but the doctors and medicines are not what's getting them better. And then starting to see patterns to what these people are doing over time. When you start to interview people and you see the same patterns coming up in interview after interview with a lot of overlap, that was fascinating to me.
But, you know, since spontaneous healing like defies so-called traditional control clinic trials, right? So you must have faced a lot of pushback at the beginning.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that was very concerning to me. The world is a lot more open, and academics and scientists are more open now than they were 20 years ago. I started this research in 2003, and there was more skepticism then. You can talk about things like well-being and healing without getting yourself laughed out of the halls of the academy. So things are changing. Back then, when I first came out of med school, it was questionable to even talk about mind and body as as its own thing. Fortunately, those are being repaired. I think it's helpful to talk about healing the nervous system rather than healing the mind or the body, because the truth is, whether you're in a medical hospital or a psychiatric hospital, there's a lot of mental in the physical and a lot of physical in the mental, and we miss the real story when we don't see how interconnected we all really are.
So before we do a deep dive, I want to try some quick myth busting. I put together a list of common health misconceptions. Actually, from this book. Did you have a chance to look at the list?
I did. I thought it was great.
Okay, so I read them one by one, and I love to get your rapid fire, true or false take, along with brief explanation for each.
Sure.
Okay, first up, our health is entirely dictated by our genes, meaning DNA is the absolute blueprint for disease.
False. There was a lot of hope in the early decades of this century that we could map the genome, map all the genes, and then we would be able to create cures for diseases. And then we discovered epigenetics, where we realized that our genes are turned on and off by lifestyle choices, for example, and by what's going on by our stressed nervous systems. And so there's so much to all this. Genes play a role, but we now know that 85% of the illnesses that we suffer from in much of the world, including all the major killers like heart disease, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune illness, lung disease, these are caused by lifestyle and by the ways in which genes get turned on and off by lifestyle. It's not a simple thing that if we can understand the genes, it's going to solve disease. It has not done that.
Sounds very empowering, we can do something about our own health. Okay, next. Eradicating all bacteria and viruses from our environment will guarantee we'll never get sick.
False. So, I think Western medicine has a big misunderstanding there, because that has been the teaching in decades of medical school training and what doctors then teach patients. But the truth is, we're surrounded by millions of bacteria and viruses and pathogens all the time, inside and outside of our bodies, 24 hours a day. Those pathogens, the bacteria and the viruses, only become a problem if there's something that has broken down in our immune system. That's the problem. And so there's so much we can do to create a healthy immune system. And the more research is done, the more we over-depend on antibiotics. I mean, antibiotics are important. Medicines, antivirals are really important. They save lives. But when they're over-depended on and they actually break down the immune system and contribute to weak immune systems. We know the number of times a woman has had antibiotics before age 18 correlates directly with her risk of breast cancer. And the more antibiotics she's had, it's a dose-dependent relationship, the more at risk of cancer. So antibiotics are important, but we over-depend on them, and that creates massive problems.
I love the Claude Bernard's analogy you cited in the book. If there is a trash on the kitchen floor, do we keep swatting the flies or do we just clean the trash? Was I right?
That's right.
Yeah, I really like that.
So if our immune system is broken down because we don't know how to heal our stress response and our nervous systems are chronically dysregulated and sending out all the harmful hormones too much of the time that break our immune systems down, that's a problem. There's so much we can do to create a healthy, vital immune system that doesn't need antibiotics a lot. And I think that's that combination of knowing when to use medicine, like an antibiotic, but also doing the things to build up healthy, robust immune systems is so important.
I think this one is also interesting. There is a single universal perfect diet or perfect lifestyle that acts as a cure-all for everyone.
False. We all come from different parts of the world. We have different microbiomes that have been acquired over generations. And, I think also some of the people I studied did not change their diet. I think they could have eaten cat food and still gotten better. So there's a lot to what nutrition is and isn't, but food is also love and the neurochemistry that we nourish when we take in food. If we take in food when we're fearful and stressed, that's going to be digested differently than if we're able to connect with the people we love and really experience love and community and connection with the food that we eat. So it's not just about a particular diet at all.
I see. I think a lot of people, follow the trend. And when someone says like purple foods are good for your health, and I collect a lot of blueberries, eggplants, and everything. Eat a lot of blueberries.
I love blueberries too.
But it's not true, right?
Right. I mean, I think our microbiomes, our guts need a wide range of nutrients and micronutrients and phytochemicals, many of which we're just starting to study now. And so there's still a lot that we're discovering.
Mm-hmm. So no single superfood.
No single superfood. Our body needs a wide range of micronutrients and phytochemicals for sure.
I think this is also somewhat related. Just cutting out flour, sugar, and meat to lower cholesterol is the ultimate ticket to a long, healthy life.
False.
I collect a lot of false statements.
Right. I mean, again, we need a lot of love and joy in our lives too. And that has such a big effect on how our food is metabolized.
That was quite relieving. I like burgers. I feel guilty every time I eat burgers.
Well, and I eat meat sometimes too, because if I'm with friends and they're having meat, I'm going to have meat too, because I'm sharing my life and conversation with them. So I don't make a big deal about those things. But I do suggest to people, well, if you're going to eat beef, then eat cows that were happy when they were alive, right?
Okay, I like that one. Okay, and next, emotional well-being, like love, forgiveness, and peace of mind. Has psychological benefits, and it holds no actual power to heal physical cancer cells.
Well, see, this is the problem with having our medical hospitals so far apart from our psychiatric hospitals and understanding, because again, there's so much mental in the physical and so much physical in the mental, and loneliness causes more deaths than cigarette smoking, for example. And so many people struggle with loneliness, even if they're connected to people but don't feel seen or understood by them or cared for, or they just are alone. And so we need these qualities of love and connection in our lives, even more than physical nutrition. People need emotional nutrition.
I think your idea will change a lot of the healthcare system. Yeah. And finally, lifestyle changes are strictly for prevention. Like if someone is already facing a terminal diagnosis like end-stage cancer, changing their habits won't make a significant difference.
I mean, that's not completely true and not completely false, right? Every situation is unique. And I think part of this journey for all of us is get to know our own bodies, our own cells, our own nervous systems, and know what we need to do for ourselves. And write our own individual prescriptions in some ways and push back on a doctor who thinks that they can be the expert over our life and our body. They meet with us for minutes at a time, and we know things about our life and our body that need to be part of that discussion and equation. So it's not just a lifestyle thing. It's really understanding the deeper shifts that need to occur for us to get a life, or for us to get a life that our body loves. Because our bodies carry trauma. They carry our story with us, and we need to be listening to what our bodies are telling us.
I like when you say like every situation is unique. That really puts things into like a perspective.
Yeah, and it requires a different science, right? I mean, you asked earlier, how did I deal with the skepticism? I mean, the way I did it, because this was a very personal journey, this research for me, I was trying to figure out what was really true because I knew something was missing. So I required that the people I studied, they had to have really clear medical evidence for accurate diagnosis and clear evidence for recovery. They had to have the biomedical correlates that supported what was really going on. And so that helped with my skepticism, but I also had to go deep into their lives to really understand the things that a quick, normal scientific survey is going to miss and not capture. And so I needed both the hard biomedical data of accurate diagnosis and recovery and cleared evidence for recovery, but also going deep into their lives to understand the qualities of what changed in their lives.
I love your insight as a doctor, and I want to be surrounded by doctors like you.
Well, that's for you to say it. I love what you bring, your perspective and your understanding intuitively of the limits of traditional Cartesian science, for example, in the West, and how much the Korean understanding and the intuition, we so desperately need that if we're going to heal medicine and help people get what they need and deserve.
Thank you for your insights. They provide an excellent foundation for our next topic. Let's discuss the core framework of this book, Cured. There are 4 pillars of healing. They're like nutrition, immune health, stress response, and identity. Can we start with the first 2? Like many believe that eating healthy simply means like avoiding processed foods and eating more produce, right? However, you distinguish this from like, I call it eating to heal. What are the true essence of a healing diet?
Yes. Well, and I think one of the myths that we've had to dispel, at least in my country, is the idea that if you just keep your cholesterol down, for example, that's a really important deal. And it turns out that the darker story around this is that the sugar industry paid to make it look like fat and cholesterol are the problem. And so it's, in the United States, the average American ate 4 pounds of sugar 100 years ago per year. 4 pounds of sugar a year, not a big deal. But now the average American consumes 154 pounds of sugar a year, and that's way too much for our system, and it creates a lot of inflammation. That's a real problem.
Wow, that's a lot.
And sugar is in so many, even in our health food stores. You can go buy salmon, for example, and it might have been packed in sugar. I mean, there's just a lot, or the tomato sauce, or there's just a lot of different foods that you wouldn't think have sugar in them, but if you look more closely, there are. So it's a big problem.
The striking case was the Subway sandwich. I didn't know that they added so much sugar. I thought it's healthy.
Right. Yes. The Supreme Court in Ireland determined some years ago that the Subway bread that they use in the franchise, the fast food sandwich, that their bread could no longer be taxed as bread because it had so much sugar in it. And that's completely apart from all the enriched flour that's in it that functions like sugar because it has a lot of the same inflammatory effects on the body.
In your book, you explain that sugar triggers like chronic inflammation by damaging the lining of our blood vessels. In simple terms, in terms like we can understand, what is actually occurring at the cellular level during chronic inflammation.
What sugar does is as it floats through your bloodstream, the little sugar granule, and those little granules of sugar cause little cuts on the inside of our arteries. Those little cuts then cause the immune system to get activated, and all these special cells come in, they rush in to repair that little cut, and that creates like a scab. Over the years, a lot of people with that high consumption of sugar get a lot of scabs on top of scabs, and we call that later atherosclerosis. And we say, well, you got to bring your cholesterol down. Well, cholesterol is a symptom rather than a cause. And so that's why the sugar is creating inflammation by creating scab on top of scab. And that's one of the things we want to reverse. If we are creating chronic inflammation in our nervous systems, in our minds, and our bodies, we are going to be more prone to illness and more prone to having difficulty recovering from illness. Because many of the diseases from which people suffer are diseases of chronic inflammation. If you stand back and look at the forest, and not just the trees, you see that it's chronic inflammation that are creating the illnesses in all of these body parts. So it's important to see the big picture and not just treat one body part and take a medicine for your blood pressure or something and not understand it's the chronic inflammation that's creating the problem at a deeper level.
But like here is the more interesting part. Despite this, you note that eating a slice of birthday cake with the family can be beneficial because like emotional value of joy and connection outweighs this like physical impact of sugar.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that joy and that connection and the love that's shared creates a neurochemistry that's good for your body, that your body loves. And so a few bites is great. eating half of the cake is not so great, and especially doing that alone and in isolation.
Just one slice. Okay. Could you explain the science behind it? Why can we eat slice without guilt?
Yeah. I mean, I think food is love, right? And so how we take in that food is associated with a certain neurochemistry. The neurochemistry of fear and anxiety and perfectionism, for example, like one can try to get their diet all perfect and try to heal that way, but we don't, I mean, perfectionism is a killer, I think, honestly, both mentally and physically. And we need joy, but joy in a way that doesn't deny trauma or what really happened, you know? I mean, because repression of feelings or suppression of feelings doesn't work either. So we need that balance again, where we're really real with our feelings, but we also are not isolating or trying to gut it through with perfectionism and that sort of thing. It's a different kind of neurochemistry we're shooting for here.
So you just connected our nutrition to our immune system, right?
Yeah. For example, so I'm a psychiatrist, so I definitely deal with dysregulated nervous systems a lot. I do prescribe medications at times, but I mostly don't. We're able to do other things to help people really heal at a deeper level. But, you know, a lot of the antidepressants are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, for example. And it's just important to know that they don't make serotonin. They just help it stick around between your brain cells a little bit longer. Over 80% of the serotonin is created in our guts by the kinds of food we eat, for example, and the kind of neurochemistry we bring that food into. So if you want to create more serotonin, which is the antidepressant molecule, then you want to create a healthy gut and lifestyle instead of just using what your body has.
Wow, everything is like all connected. Okay, let's go to the third pillar, healing your stress response. How do you differentiate between like toxic stress and beneficial stress? Like before that question, like what is stress?
Great question. Yeah, and there's different kinds of stress, right? I mean, stress can break down your nervous system, leading you more vulnerable to getting ill, or stress can make you stronger, right? I mean, running a marathon or running a 5-mile race is stressful, but your body can experience that really differently. If it's something you really love or it's helping you develop more stress tolerance, that's great. And so looking for stress within that window of tolerance where stress helps us become stronger, like weightlifting, builds more strength, but you don't want to overdo it so that you cause decompensation and a stress response that actually hurts you rather than creates a wider window of tolerance. Expanding our window of tolerance is great, but overdoing it hurts us, just like underdoing it hurts us.
I want to ask you a practical question related to that. What is the most effective, like immediate step our audience can take to implement like this healing mode in their daily routines?
Well, I think that I've seen over the years that some people feel ready to do one thing, but the next person might feel ready to do something else. So one person might begin by changing their nutrition, by cleaning out an overabundance of sugar, for example, or white flour. But another person might want to get into therapy and heal their trauma, for example. And so you can start anywhere in those pillars or anywhere along the path that makes sense to you, but just making a change, even if it's a small change, that small change, you know, two paths part in a woods, and it isn't long before those two paths are in very different universes. A big change can, if it happens too fast, it might cause us to have another part of our body or mental system have some pushback and we fall back into old patterns. I think each of us needs to look at our lives and look at where do we want to make a change right now. And even if it's a small change, and then just have compassion for the parts of ourselves that struggle with that. And then there's more changes that we're ready for down the road. And it isn't that long before we're in a really different world with different kinds of habits, different kinds of relationships There's a lot to all of this. Some people make big changes and they're okay with that and they don't relapse. You can feel a shift, for example, of a person who's smoking and they might say forever, they're going to stop now and they keep failing. You can feel something shift when they're ready to really stop. And it's like they close a door in the back of their mind and they're not going to open that door again. And that habit is done. You can feel when a shift actually occurs and you don't need that old habit. It can be a big change. Realistically, we also start with little changes too. So every situation is different for what we're each ready for.
I love the way you approach this question. So many doctors give a single effective solution as a prescription, quit smoking, go out and running, eat some food, blueberries, but you don't do that.
Blueberries are fabulous for all kinds of reasons.
I like blueberries. We can naturally go to the next question. How do these physical and neurochemical states connect to the fourth pillar, healing your identity? I think this part is really interesting to me. How does the shift in self-perception translate into physical recovery?
Yeah, great question. So often, people will be telling me about their stories of recovery, and then they will sit up, look me in the eye, and make sure I really understand that what they really believe the healing was about the healing of their identity, their healing their experience of themselves and the world. And in doing that, a lot happens. A lot of the people I've studied, I've concluded are people pleasers. And I think the effects of narcissistic oppression or creating people who need to be people pleasers in order to survive or grow up, I think our bodies tell those stories. And I think it creates a burden on the body that we would do well to listen to. I often tell the story about a woman who really helped crystallize this for me after years of studying this pattern. She was a woman with breast cancer, and in the context of healing her breast cancer, she created what she called a selfish bitch project. And she, because she began to realize that what she thought was selfish was not selfish, and she needed to learn how to honor what her body needed. She had spent her entire life taking care of everyone else except for herself, and she felt like to begin setting boundaries, saying no to her husband, who I think was a bit narcissistic, or to set boundaries in her relationships so that she could pay attention to her own well-being and what helped her have a life where she flourished and was not chronically stressed. That created a really different life for her. She learned to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. She started to push back against people who were taking advantage of her. And, I think that liberated something in her nervous system and in her well-being and in setting up a life that she initially felt was selfish, but actually was just taking better care of herself. It's kind of like the old analogy of, if you're on an airplane, give yourself oxygen before you try to give someone else oxygen. I think we can't give to another what we have not learned how to give to ourselves. I mean, there's a lot that happens in growing up where you sometimes seek to appease others or fawn others or try to be someone who won't get someone angry. I think that creates a certain kind of neurochemistry that's not good for our nervous systems.
One of my favorite podcasts is Freakonomics, and the last closing metaphor is take care of yourself and take care of others if you can. I think that message, give your oxygen first and then.
That is such a deep principle, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to that once you start to go down that path, and you have to change your whole life. And some people will go along with that change with you, some loved ones and friends, and some won't. And so she ended up also choosing some other people in her life who were new friends, and they treated her better, and she looked for that. So her nervous system was a lot happier at the end of the day.
Now I want to ask you about your own journey. In this conclusion of your book, you confess that devoting 20 plus years to this research radically turned your own life and your view of reality upside down, not as a medical doctor, but simply as a human being. What existential shift or personal transformation did you experience?
Well, I have a different body and nervous system now. And I grew up in a very violent situation. People joke that when they see a picture of me and my family, they say, you must be adopted. You can actually tell that the facial features are there, but my health trajectory is so different than theirs. It's a really different life that I have now because of studying these people. It's been really good for me to study these people because I was a slow learner, but a lot of it rubbed off on me. And so, things can change for any of us. I have a very heavy trauma burden. I'm a lot healthier than I was then. I look healthier. When I look back at the pictures from 2002, for example, I was overweight. I've lost 40 pounds over the years. I was a slow learner, honestly, had a lot to learn, had to deconstruct a lot of my medical training, but I have learned a lot, and I'm a lot healthier than a lot of the people around me. I don't have illnesses. I don't need medicines these days. I would take them if I needed them. My siblings, I'm the oldest of 4 children in my family. They're all struggling with really difficult illnesses. One died a few years ago because of cancer. It was preventable, in my view. And I tell a little bit of that story in Relation Sick, which is coming out in several months. But there's so much we can do to heal our minds and our bodies and our nervous systems. And it's just really important that we help people know more about that. Because I have a whole different body now than I had 20 years ago.
Now it's time for our signature question here at Stella's Book Insight. As a medical expert who has truly plumbed the depth of medical miracles, how would you answer this question? In the next 10 years, what would you think will change the most, and what would you think will never change?
What I think is really exciting is that we are on the cusp of a revolution in medicine that is associated with the democratization of medicine, right? So it has to do with the right of each person to know their own body and define their own trajectory of health and recovery. Our life and bodies can wake up to a neurochemistry of happiness and healing and peace and healing trauma that really makes a big difference. The democratization that's trying to occur as we leave a Cartesian Newtonian world and into a more world of quantum mechanics. It's coming in through the digital world, which has a very different relationship between mind and body. And this technology where we have sensors that we can place on our bodies or in the environment and apps on our phones, that's massively promising and is going to help us continue to find levels of well-being where we actually study healing and well-being instead of just taking a medication. That's such a different world. So that's a massive change that's coming.
I wanted to ask you about the last message you'd like to share with our audience.
Create a life that your body loves, right? Give yourself the emotional nutrition, not just the physical nutrition, but also the emotional and the spiritual nutrition that really helps you come alive and puts a light in your eyes, helps you feel loved, have compassion for yourself, feel connected to others, to not feel alone. Those are life-giving, right? So to know your value and know that we all bring something beautiful and good into the world. None of us are less than anybody, and none of us are more than anybody else. We all are human beings on this planet learning how to love and connect to each other, to learn how to have compassion for our own selves rather than judgment or people-pleasing.
Wow, beautifully said. Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your life's work. It was incredible.
It's really an honor to be with you. Thank you for all the work you're doing to spread such important ways of thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
오늘의 대화 어떠셨나요? 이 리포트들을 보다 보면 점점 이 헬스케어의 글로벌 트렌드가 아프고 나서 치료를 하는 것에서 애초에 아프지 않는 건강한 몸과 마음을 만들어가는 방향으로 나아가고 있는 것 같아요. 이 2000년대 초반만 해도 이 마음 챙김, 명상 이런 게 치료랑 무슨 상관이냐 했던 것 같은데 그랬던 비주류 의학 연구가 오늘날 중요한 중심 의제가 된 것도 참 흥미로운 것 같고요. 이 인터뷰가 이 건강에 대한 여러분의 시야를 조금 더 넓히는 데 도움이 되었길 바라는 마음으로 스텔라의 북인사이트 저희는 다음 시간에도 좋은 책과 저자로 찾아오겠습니다. 만나보고 싶은 저자나 다뤄보고 싶은 책이 있다면 댓글로 달아주세요. 좋아요, 구독 잊지 마시고요. 우리 여기서도 자주 오래 봐요.